So I'm currently editor and contributor, whatever, to Technocracy News and Trends, which has been around for several years now. Has an international audience, interestingly. I started it for Americans, because I'm American. And all of a sudden I find out people are coming from all over the world. Every planet, or every country on Earth has had people from their country coming to read articles on Technocracy News and Trends. I'm also the executive director and founder of a nonprofit organization called Citizens for Free Speech, which originally started to try and make a counter to the censorship that was going on in big media, the Facebooks and Twitters of the world. And we have a national membership now. It's quite large. We're still chasing it, trying to help people get active locally to be successful and getting things done in their local communities. So that's what I do, and that's what keeps me busy.
Yeah, that's great. Well, free speech is something that's dear to my heart, and I build. It's one of the building blocks to have for all these other things are dependent on first having free speech, and I'm kind of stunned, quite frankly, at how many people don't understand this basic fundamental, which is the idea that just because someone you disagree with is being censored, that's okay. Who decides, and people just don't have the foresight to see where this leads.
They don't, and there's two sides to free speech issue. Of course, most of the focus is on your right to speak, and you can say, well, you have free speech, you're talking right now, and you can say whatever you want. But the flip side of that is people have a right to hear what they want to hear, whoever might be doing the speaking, and so. If you block the transmission mechanisms where people cannot hear what they want to hear, that's a violation of free speech as well. And the Constitution has a lot to say about it. We're one of the few countries in the world that has the concept of freedom of speech and the press, et cetera, embedded in our Constitution. It's very important. It was made the First Amendment on purpose by the founders of our country. They knew that communication was everything in a constitutional republic, and they said if you lose the ability to communicate, you'll die. And we're going through that right now. We're having great pains in America because the First Amendment has been under direct attack now for a long time. COVID was just a crusher for the First Amendment. Churches shut down, freedom of speech, people were muzzled. I mean, who can understand anybody when they've got a face mask on, right? We couldn't assemble anymore and have meetups and rallies or anything for a long time. The government stopped listening to us altogether. They shut their doors. They just basically they bought a big Zoom subscription basically, and that's the last we ever saw of it. So the First Amendment just got crushed in the last year. I personally do not believe that was just coincidental or unintended consequences. I think that was a big part of what I call the coup d'etat of technocracy that started with COVID early last year.
Yeah, I agree. And the idea of having government meetings and government happenings online, well, you can disappear people on digitally without even, no one even knowing what the heck happened.
Yes, and that has happened. People typically do not see the bigger picture on how censorship is taking place right now in America. And it's not just on Facebook or Twitter. You have a whole host of other entities that are kind of entering into that. For instance, Amazon has been dropping books off of their bookstore. They send an email to somebody that maybe been publishing their book for 5 years on Amazon, so maybe they sold thousands of copies. They get a notice one day, you can't sell your book on our store anymore.
Wow.
And we won't produce it for you either. Boom, you're gone. Well, that's electronic book burning. When Google sets about in its algorithm to cancel you out of the search engine mechanism that they have, basically people can't find you. They can't hear what you have to say anymore. Google has been also removing whole bodies of evidence and truth from the internet simply by disappearing it on their search engine. It's just not findable anymore. Now, if you knew specifically what the address was, like the URL or something, you might find it by yourself, but most 99% of the people will not, because they rely on search engines to locate stuff for them. And of course, they don't write down the addresses when they have them in hand. They just, oh, I can get it anytime I want. I'll just go back and search for it again, and it'll be there. Next week, it's not there to go, what happened? This is electronic book burning. The picture that comes to my mind is what happened, for instance, in Bolshevik Russia back in 1918. And in Germany as well, under Hitler's revolution, where books were just carried out in the street. And there was no electronic things back then. They brought the books out in the street. They put a big giant fire, poured gasoline or kerosene on them, and burned them.
Yeah, I remember the pictures.
Yeah, this is exactly what's happening, but it's electronic right now. It ought to occur to anybody who's kind of studied history a little bit. It ought to occur really quickly that this is an element of a coup. Every revolution, and let's go back 150 years anyway, we don't need to go back further, but in the last 150 years, every revolution has taken place. The very first singular thing it's done is stop the media. They take over the newspapers, they take over the printing presses, they take over the radio stations, they take over the TV stations when TV came in. In many cases, they drug them out and shot them. That was the end of that. There was a case in China or in Hong Kong just recently where some editors of one of the larger newspapers there were arrested because they were saying things contrary to the government. So they had them arrested and they carried them away in handcuffs. And these are very genteel people, by and large, freedom-loving, genteel people. They're wearing suits and they got neckties, and they're very professional people. They hauled them away just like a bunch of criminals. So the coup that's going on right now is top to bottom within the corporate worlds, where you find most of this stuff. You find Amazon's banning books, Google's banning books. You find out Stripe and PayPal are dropping people from their payment platforms so people can't collect payments if they want to. People have a right to hear what they want to hear, whoever might be doing the speaking. And so if you block the transmission mechanisms where people cannot hear what they want to hear, that's a violation of free speech as well.